Hi, fourth grade. This week we are going to make a spider web. This is a project that I've done the past few years with fourth graders, and it always turns out beautiful. This project is going to be a 2-week project. So, as you know, if you've had me before, that sometimes we can't finish a project in the 50 minutes that we have in 1 week. So we might continue it to the next week. So this week we're going to make the first half, and then I'm going to ask you to save it somewhere special and safe. And then next week, we're going to add on and complete it. So I'm going to show you my finished example real quick, and I'm going to show you how to make this today, a spider web. Now, we've been talking about lines. This one has straight lines and curved lines in it. So to make our nice straight lines, I do want you to use a ruler and a pencil to start. If you don't have a ruler, then you can find something with a straight edge. I'm just sitting here actually at my art table, and I notice that this has a straight edge on it, and it's fairly long like a ruler. That would work too. So go ahead and watch me do this. You'll get an idea of how to do it by yourself, and then you'll be able to complete it on your own. I'm going to tilt my camera down in a minute so you can see me actually drawing this. I do want to mention that I am using a square piece of paper, and I know that that's not something very common. So if you have a rectangle piece of paper and you want to make it square, all you have to do is fold one of the short edges over to a long side. I'm going to fold this down now so you can see. I think I've taught you this before, like if you're making a snowflake and you wanted a square paper. By doing that, then you just cut off this extra space right there, and then you'll have a square piece. And there, you have a perfectly square piece of paper that you can use to make your spider web on. I just think square works better for this project than a rectangle. So in order to do this, once you have your square piece, I'm going to actually turn that over a little bit just so it's a little flatter for me. You're going to decide, and this is going to be an art word I want you to learn today, is a focal point. We've talked about that before, but it's the point on the paper that everything is going to look like it's coming into, like a vanishing point, but it's also the point where when you look at it, your eye gets drawn to it the most. It's going to be the center of our whole project. So somewhere near the center, if you want to really be creative, you could make it a little off center, but I think it's easier for this to make a dot. It doesn't have to be very large, just enough for you to see it. I'm going to make mine a little bigger so you can see it on my camera. All right, the next thing you're going to do then is you're going to take a ruler. Now, you're going to set that ruler on that dot all the way to the edge of the paper where you want your line to go. It can go to a corner if you want it to. It doesn't have to, like that. I am going to go ahead and make mine go kind of towards the corners. That's just a preference I have, but you don't need to. And you're going to go all the way around that dot to create some straight lines. You don't want to do too many, but definitely more than 4. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to randomly add a few more. They're not going to be perfectly in the middle. I just want to make it look a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to go around and add some more. I'm just rotating my paper as I go, and I can see what I like. You can take your time on this. Notice I'm holding my ruler down with my non-dominant hand, the hand I don't write with, so I can trace nicely with my hand that I do write with. Okay, so at this point, I've got a center dot, that's the focal point, with all of these straight lines radiating out from it. Now notice my lines aren't too close together, but they're different. So I would say you really wouldn't want them to be less than an inch apart because it might be too difficult later to do. So it's up to you, but you do not need to measure these. Mine are all different, and I think that looks more natural, like a spider web. All right, after you do this part, you are going to take your pencil and you are going to make like a C or an arc line, connecting each of these straight lines to each other. Watch me do this. I'm not going to go real close. I'm going to come out a little bit. I'm going to leave a little space. And I'm making like an arc from this line to this line. And then I'm going to do the same for this one. Almost, they're like touching at each spot, but they sink down. The arc is going towards the center. I am turning my paper a little bit as I go. For me, that's easier. Until they're all connected. And you can see it's a little bit, it's not totally perfect, but I like that because like I said, it looks a little bit more natural to me. I do have a little smudge there if I have. So that's what you're going to do. Now the next one, make it be a little bit farther out, not too close together. So maybe a couple fingers out, and you're going to do it again. You do have to keep your eye on the paper so you're watching and making sure you're connecting each line. So you're just making a dip down, hits the next line, then you pick it up again. And again. Now, you can definitely do a few more if you need to. When I get to this outer one, some of them have more space than the others, but we'll see. I know I'm going a little fast. You can take your time, but I don't want to take up too much time of yours. I just want you to get the idea. Okay, that's about what I like to do. I don't like to make them too close together, and you're going to see why in just a moment. After you do this part of it, you are going to just need to use a black crayon or an oil pastel, and I don't know if you have those at home. I used an oil pastel on this one. If you do have an oil pastel and you decide to go over your pencil with that, keep in mind that it does smear rather easily. So a little smudge here and there is okay, but you need to be careful to lift your hand and not drag it across. I'm going to use a crayon for this one. Now it does need to be made out of wax or oil for this to work. Next week, we're going to add a little watercolor paint to it, and we need it to resist and not stick to the paint. I'll explain that a little more later. So I'm going to take my crayon and very carefully look. I'm not going to use a ruler for this part. I'm just going to go on top of my nice straight line. And I'm very carefully going to go over all of my pencil lines. That is why you don't really want to make these too close together, because you're using a crayon that's a little wider than a pencil, and it'll be a little bit more difficult to get a lot of detail if you have the lines really close together. So I'm pushing on this, I'm going slow, and I'm making my black lines. Remember, it does need to be a crayon. A colored pencil or a marker isn't going to have the same effect. It needs to be made out of wax or oil, like an oil pastel. So I'm going to go around and do this to all of them. Okay, so for today, you are going to complete your web, set it aside, and wait till next week. Next week, I will be, just so you have a little bit of a heads up, I'm going to be using watercolor to complete this project in a special way. I don't want you to jump ahead and do anything with color right now, but I am going to be using these. If you don't have paint at home, that's okay. You could substitute it with crayons or markers, but on the off chance, I did want to give you a heads up that I will be demonstrating watercolor next week. All right. I can't wait to see these. So this week I'd like you to take a picture of this completed project, the web with the black over it, so I can see that you did it halfway. And then next week I'll need you to get it back out again because we're going to complete it in a special kind of way to make it look finished. Have fun, and I can't wait to see your webs.